So Joe Biden is doing perhaps the most Joe Biden thing of all time, or considering doing the most Joe Biden thing of all time. Take a look at this. Breaking, Biden's DHS may restart construction on the U.S.-Mexico border wall to fill any gaps in the current barrier, says DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. This is something that they're considering behind the scenes. They're considering doing more of Trump's border wall. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. Somebody tweeted, Biden is a Donald Trump Democrat. That's sort of what it looks like, right? Now, listen, I don't know. The way it's worded, it makes me think they're saying there are gaps where the wall has been built already, and they just want to fill in those gaps, but they don't want to complete the entire thing. That's the way I'm interpreting it. But either way, I mean, totally Trumpian. Ryan Grimm made the point, okay, if you don't want any gaps in the wall, tear down the entire wall. So, but here's the point, guys. Virtually everybody who was screaming at the top of their lungs, and they're part of the resistance crowd, they said this wall is immoral, it's unethical, it's un-American, it's racist, it's bigoted. They ain't gonna say Dickie McGeezax now that it's Biden who's considering filling in the gaps in the wall. Not gonna say anything. In the same way that, all of a sudden, the people who were crying about kids in cages, when Biden's putting the kids in cages, they're like, I don't even know what happened. What were you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. I seen they're trying to do the best they can, and they got to do whatever they got to do. And if you don't understand that's what do you want them to do? There's got to be things that they got to fix, and they're going to get to it, and they're doing the best that they can. In the same way that you had Democrats who, and to be fair, Republicans they flipped also. All of a sudden, Sean Hannity is pretending to care about human rights at the border and kids in cages. It's ridiculous. But, this is too perfect a story because of the immense hypocrisy that's going to be on display, if not is already on display. And it's also, it perfectly illustrates the point that we've made about Biden and his entire career this entire time, which is he really is a moderate Republican. I think you can make an argument that the moderate Republican position is keep up the Trump wall and fill in the gaps, but don't complete the entire wall to build the rest of it, right? Like, there's so much more that has to be built. He's not going to do all that, but he will fill in the gaps of the part of the wall that's already built. You know what I mean? That strikes me as like the moderate Republican position. And you go through his record, and it has this stuff all over it. By the way, this isn't the first time he's flirted with the wall. There's a famous clip of him, I don't know how long ago it was, maybe it was in the 1990s or early 2000s or something, but he basically says we need a barrier. So not a wall, a barrier or a fence. He said one of those two things, you barrier or fence. I think Hillary said the same thing. This is who they are, guys. This is who they are. The corporate Democrats, the so-called centrist Democrats, Biden is one of them, they supported the Patriot Act. They supported the Iraq War. They supported a number of outsourcing deals. Biden bragged about wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare and do a grand bargain. He was in line with a lot of the deficit hawkery that the right-wingers do. I mean, this is who he is, so I think that says everything. It says everything about what he does in reality versus the perception of him. You have this perception from the Republicans that he's, Bernie Sanders or to the left of Bernie Sanders. He's some sort of hardcore socialist or social democrat. That's preposterous. But then you also have people on the Democratic team who thought he was going to swoop in and save the day and be the next FDR, which is absurd. I mean, it's ridiculous. He was always going to do a half measure on top of the half measure. He was always going to water everything down massively and then pretend like that's a bold position and then get clonked over the head more in negotiations with Republicans or the even more conservative Democrats like Joe Manchin and give us, tiny little tweaks around the edges and incremental change. And this is a great example of it right here. So it'll be interesting to see more of their reaction. It'll be interesting to see if he actually goes through with it because now I don't. Actually, I don't. I was going to say there's noise around this, but I don't know how much noise around this there is. I'm going to talk about it. Other lefty hosts are going to talk about it. Maybe some left-wing groups will write a letter or some shit. But are actual Democratic politicians and Democrats in the media, are they going to be outraged by this and push them on this? I don't think they're going to say anything. I think when Biden does a Trump policy, all of a sudden, those sorts of Democrats just pretend like it's awesome and it's necessary. And what are we supposed to do? I think the New York Times just had an article like, Biden finished the wall before the next Trump does it. So, see, this is how they are. Like, the media was never against Trump for policy reasons. They were against Trump because they don't like Trump and the personality and the mean tweets and the bravado. That's the thing that they don't like. It had nothing to ever do with policy. The media doesn't care if you cut taxes for the wealthy and deregulate or build a wall. So that's why they're begging Biden to do the Trump things, and they're going to like it now when Biden does it. See, this is what I mean. It's not substantive at all. It's not even close to substantive. So, I don't know. I don't know if he's actually going to follow through with it, because it does seem incredibly egregious. I mean, this would be so arrogant. But I don't know if he's going to follow through with it, but, my prediction is you're going to have the resistance types, the hardcore Democrat types are going to support it. They're either going to support it or say nothing. So that's going to happen. And then it'll be interesting to see the Republican response. It'll be hilarious because, if the trends hold true, all of a sudden they'll be against the wall. They'll be like, Biden's for it, so this must be bad and socialist or something. So now I'm against it. Or they'll just, they'll just call out the media hypocrisy and the Democratic Party hypocrisy and say, hey, wait a second, you guys said this was racist and now he's doing it, now it's okay? So, I mean, it's just too perfect a story. You couldn't make the point in a clearer way than this, that Joe Biden is a moderate Republican. And if the mountain of evidence that points in that direction doesn't sway you, then you're not swayable.